What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. A lot has happened in the last 12 hours as not only have Doug Ford and Mark Carney essentially screwed the entire country by going to war essentially with Donald Trump. I've always said, I hoped Trump would come back at Carney with 100% tariffs that he starts spanking the government for all their reckless decisions. But what has just happened is going to screw this entire country. And not only that, folks, it looks like we are inevitably headed back to the polls. I'm going to show you why that's happening. And, it's not the right time for it. In fact, I'm more worried of what this means for possibly using Donald Trump to get Mark Carney a majority government. Let's take a look at it right now. Mark Nixon tweeting out last night, breaking: Doug Ford just caused Donald Trump to terminate trade negotiations with Canada. Ford's $75 million ad used, it says, fake Ronald Reagan audio to attack U.S. tariffs without permission from the Reagan Foundation. Trump is furious. Here's the tweet put out by Donald Trump. The Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. The ad was for $75 million. They only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts. Tariffs are very important to the national security and economy of the United States of America. Based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention on this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, first off, I want to defend Donald Trump here. No, I will not defend, but agree with Donald Trump. He has every right to terminate those agreements, and those are negotiations, I should say. The reckless behavior of liberal Doug Ford alongside Mark Carney and his government by saying, hey, our relationship with the United States is over. We're going to go pursue other markets when the United States is our biggest trading partner. The constant doubling down from Doug Ford that, Trump's tariffs are making jobs leave the country. It's all because of Trump. Trump. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you cease negotiations? Why wouldn't you give the finger to Canada and say, we've had enough? I don't blame him. Now you have Doug Ford doubling down. And keep in mind, this is the same day, this is yesterday, as they put out their ad, their $75 million ad. Doug Ford just calls the United States the greatest friend and ally after months of slamming the United States and President Trump. Take a listen to this 10-second clip of what he says about our energy.
We're going to have enough energy, not just to send around the world with SMRs, but large-scale nuclear. Send it down south. There's nowhere else I'd want to send it to than our closest friend and ally.
Yeah, our closest friend and ally that you've been throwing under the bus for the last couple of months, saying that every problem Canada's endured in the last 10 years as a result of Captain Blackface and Mark Carney is a result of a couple of months of Trump being president. Give me a break. I hope this guy, I really hope he gets recalled. I hope this is the end of Doug Ford. I doubt it, but you can see even Keith Wilson, super lawyer, who, by the way, is speaking alongside myself tomorrow at the Alberta Independence rally at the legislature from 4 to 6 p.m. Make sure you're there, folks. This is going to be the last bastion of freedom in this country. Keith Wilson comes out and says, why is Trump upset with Premier Ford? Ontario's government cut a clip of Ronald Reagan praising presidential tariff powers and spent $75 million on a U.S. ad campaign misrepresenting him to attack President Trump. Watch what they clipped out here. It says Alberta should not have to suffer the consequences of stupid decisions of Ontario politicians. Alberta deserves better. The rest of Canada deserves better. These two idiots have completely screwed the country. I'm going to play the clip because this is what was cut out of Reagan's speech, and now you know why.
Well, I've never forgotten those jobs, and on trade issues, by and large, we've done well. In certain select cases, like the Japanese semiconductors, we've taken steps to stop unfair practices against American products. but we've still maintained our basic long-term commitment to free trade and economic growth. So, with my meeting with Prime Minister Nakasone and the Venice Economic Summit coming up, it's terribly important not to restrict a president's options in such trade dealings with foreign governments. Unfortunately, some in the Congress are trying to do exactly that. I'll keep you informed on this dangerous legislation because it's just another form of protectionism, and I may need your help to stop it. Remember, America's jobs and growth are at stake. Until next week, thanks for listening, and God bless you.
So all of that was cut from the propaganda ad put out by Mark Carney because, well, it spins their narrative. Doug Ford's turning into the CBC. Just take what you need, twist it around, and don't worry about the consequences. Well, the consequences are real, folks. You got Pierre Poilievre doing his victory lap because, well, they think that they're going to go to the polls and the Conservatives are going to get a majority government just because Mark Carney's doing a terrible job so far. And they think that the elbows up crowd has had enough, that they're ready to vote for a Conservative government. I've got bad news for them. What Donald Trump just did is going to be the wedge issue that is once again used as we go to the polls after this disastrous budget is delivered. And the behavior of Pierre, the words that are being used, the smiles on the faces, all tells you, folks, that Pierre knows the election is coming. I've said that this election should wait for spring. You need more time for those in places like Toronto to feel the real brunt of just how bad things are about to get. Things will need to get much worse before they can get better. And if the Conservatives would ever stand a chance of a majority government, you need a majority government in order to change the outlook for Canada. This is not the time to go back to the polls. As much as I'm not defending Mark Carney by any avenue to say that he should remain prime minister, but I think any common sense individual can look at the landscape right now and say that this is not the time to go back to the polls. I'm going to start with this clip. Pierre just exposed Mark Carney's fear campaign. Carney is justifying the worst budget in Canadian history by scaring Canadians into thinking poverty is stability and debt is investment. Fear is his only plan. Failure is the only result. We saw that with 10 years of Trudeau. Here's how Pierre came out yesterday.
I wanted to respond today to Mark Carney's big, hyped-up speech to Canadian youth. So we brought some people here who do qualify. Come on, let's get somebody in here who's young enough to be youth. Although Pierre is the George Clooney of our caucus, so he's forever young. And we have Sandra Cabina, who's much younger than I am, and she will be sharing some of the stories of the many young people she encounters in her constituency. When we heard about this speech, we watched it with great interest because of how much misery and suffering our young people have endured over the last decade of liberal inflation, crime, and chaos. And so we were looking for Mr. Carney to reverse course on all of these policies. So what did we find out? Well, first of all, we got the normal buffet of broken promises and buzzwords. There was lots of talk about catalyzing this and catalyzing that. There was a new promise about doubling exports to non-U.S. markets, all while he refuses to even support the one single thing that would actually export more of our resources to those markets. He's still not stating his support for an oil pipeline to the Pacific, nor has he gotten any projects underway that would achieve any of these things. So there was the normal repetition of already broken promises with a lot of fancy million-dollar words.
So that right there, and a lot of people might say, hey, Fringe, this doesn't say a campaign's coming. The gloves have been taken off, and that's about to be repeated in the next post. Carney has botched the budget. Pierre knows this. You've already got the Bloc saying that they're going to vote it down. Once again, everything lies on the whims of the NDP to decide if they're going to go down with the ship again, supporting Mark Carney's budget, or vote against it. They've already said that, well, they don't want to go back to the polls, but they also will not support a budget if it doesn't make sense. There have been many meetings on Parliament Hill. Pierre's outlook has changed drastically. You can see another post from Mark Nixon here. It's happening. We're headed for an election in Canada. The smile of a man who knows his second chance is imminent. Pierre's recap of his meeting with Mark Carney says it all. The gloves are off. Look at Pierre as he just comes out of this meeting. The confidence, the posturing, he knows this is, as Mark says, it's imminent.
You hear anything to change your mind?
Well, we had a good conversation. My message, of course, to the Prime Minister is that people can't afford to pay any more, that they're tapped out, their grocery bills, the rent is too high after 10 years of excess spending. So I shared my view that we need the government to bring down its inflationary deficits and taxes. I was grateful for the chance to sit down with the Prime Minister. We had a good conversation. He didn't make any commitments, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what he comes up with.
You said you hoped he was enlisted.
So out of this 5-minute clip, that's all I'm going to show because that's really all we need. The smile on the face, the confidence. We just came out of the meeting. He started talking again in the lingo of a campaign. The used car salesman bit. And listen, folks, if we could get rid of the Liberals tomorrow and have a Conservative majority, I'm all for it. I'm all for Pierre running the country. The problem here is exactly what I was just saying. Things will need to get worse for those who control the vote and who control a majority or a minority government in Ontario. In cities like Toronto, things would have to get much worse in order to swing the elbows up crowd to say, all right, we can't deal with Mark Carney anymore. We can't deal with Liberals anymore. It's time we make a change with our vote. If we go back to the polls after the tweet put out by Donald Trump, this will be weaponized to get Mark Carney a majority government. And if Mark Carney has a majority government, folks, it's not just waiting until spring to see how bad things get after the budget. It's not just waiting to see how all of the ceasing of trade negotiations affects Canada as more jobs leave. It's 4 more years of a majority government that can pass any bill they want, that can put forward any motion they please. They don't have to pander to the bloc. They don't have to pander to the NDP to try and skate them through anymore. So while Donald Trump has told the world, screw Canada, and rightfully so, the question for Canadians is, how much worse do you really want it to get? And do you believe now is the right time to go back to the polls, as it looks as though it's imminent? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, boy, we're right on the threshold of 145,000 subscribers. I hope you click that subscribe button. I hope this video's earned your subscription. Make sure to join me live tonight and every Wednesday and Friday night for Unhinged Fringe on Wednesdays, Friday Night Fringe on Fridays. I'll be joined tonight by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we talk about everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know coming up in the week ahead, as well as your Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I look forward to chatting with you guys outside of making these videos. It's my last bastion of sanity. I most importantly look forward to chatting with you tonight and every Wednesday and Friday night, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.